All right, Sarah, thank you very much, and let me just add my echo to all the compliments that have been paid to Sarah and Al and their Agri-Pulse team. This is a good crowd, Sarah, for the day that we've got and the weather that is before us, and thank you guys for all being hearty. I suspect there's a lot of Midwesterners or upper Midwesterners here that are like, that's not snow, but a day like this, and I know it's caused a lot of stress for the people involved in all this, but it is a reminder, we are an agriculture industry, and there's many days where I'm thankful that, getting up in bad weather is not going to start pulling dramatic amounts of money out of my pocket, but yet the people we serve, in this business, obviously weather is critical to their survival, and so as we all kind of make our way out of here later today and battle with this weather, be thankful that it's probably not pulling money out of our wallet, although it may be pulling money out of Sarah and Al's wallet, I'm not sure, but in any event. Folks, again, I'm here on behalf of farmer-owned cooperatives. Got a lot of members in this room, a lot of familiar faces. Let me just say that we're very, very honored at NCFC at what we do for farmer-owned co-ops across the country. Anytime you've got a business out there that is farmer-owned, that's a core business structure that's going to be something pretty special. And the companies we represent are pretty special companies. We like the idea that farmers are able to come together through co-ops and do things that just flat out would not be possible. We take some of that for granted. We think about volume purchasing, and sure, it's better if you can buy for 10 rather than for 1, that kind of stuff. But think about what's happened out there where farmers have created branded products. Land O'Lakes butter, Welch's grape juice, Ocean Spray cranberries. I mean, these are farmer-directed, successful business operations, and they're something, again, that we're just very, very highly proud of and are going to champion the cause of our farmer co-ops, whether in Farm Bill, food policy, or maybe even tax policy going forward. So, again, Sarah, thank you for having me here today, and thank you for all of your help to my members and to farmer co-ops across the country. It is my honor, my main purpose for being up here today is to introduce our friend, Ambassador Gregg Doud. He's our newly confirmed Chief Agriculture Negotiator at the U.S. Office of Trade, our trade representative. Most of us know Gregg and know him well. And it's always good when one of our own does well for themselves. And as we all know, not only is Gregg going to do well for himself, but he's going to do well for each one of us. He has served as president of the Commodity Markets Council. Gregg is certainly, again, no stranger to roles in ag policy, as he served on the Senate Agriculture Committee as a professional staff person. He was also a chief economist at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association before that, and has served a stint at the U.S. Wheat Associates as well. So you've got grain, livestock, just about every aspect wrapped up here in our chief negotiator, and probably most importantly, Gregg maintains family investment in his own family operation back there in Kansas, which is a Century Farm. And as many of our speakers have said today, that's a pretty darn good grounding that we appreciate in this business. So Gregg, come on up and share your thoughts with us, and thank you for your sacrifice in serving this administration.
Good afternoon. How are all you guys doing today? Well, it's good to see some familiar faces out here. Thank you, Chuck, Sarah, Al. If you haven't been outside since this morning or haven't been outside since last evening, there is a lot of moisture out there. There's a lot of moisture that we could use in Kansas out there. So hopefully you guys are careful out there today. It only took me a little over 3 hours to make an hour trip into town today, so it's a little dicey out there. But this afternoon, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here, Sarah, on behalf of President Trump, Ambassador Lighthizer, and my colleagues at USTR regarding a topic of agricultural trade, and specifically our priority, which is obviously to increase U.S. agricultural exports. First, let me just say that I'm happy to finally be on the job. I'll leave a little pause there. It's also important to note that Ambassador Lighthizer, as of this week, finally has his full team of deputies on the job at USTR, and they're really, really, truly terrific guys. And so we're ready to go at USTR, and it couldn't come at a more critical time. It's time to get to work, and there is a lot to be done. So for my remarks today, I want to kind of walk you through this. I want to first start with the handbook or the to-do list of what we've got to do here. And for that, I would refer you to the President's 2018 Trade Policy Agenda, Putting America First. If you have not read that, and I presume most of you have not, I would encourage you to do so. The front of it, it's about 30 pages or so, and it is just a really good explanation of what the plan here is. And clearly in that agenda, it says that the Trump administration will use all tools to ensure America's farmers are treated fairly. First of all, I also want to say that I've spent many years here in town involved in coordinating rules. And that includes when I was at the Cattlemen, really spent a lot of time coordinating between USDA and the Foreign Ag Service and the folks who are now my colleagues at Ag Affairs at USTR. And you're going to hear me use this word coordinating a lot here in the next few parts of my speech. I have known Undersecretary Ted McKinney for a lot of years, and we are already coordinating, and we will continue to coordinate in our critical roles to resolve the issues to open key markets for U.S. ag exports. My remarks today, I want to focus on discussing those who follow the rules versus those who don't. In trade speak, we use the word enforcement to describe what I'm just mentioning here. On one hand, we have America's farmers and ranchers who have a comprehensive knowledge of how our markets function. We are extremely familiar with our own futures markets, and in most cases, these are the institutions that establish the price at which agricultural commodities are traded in today's world. We in the U.S. are also extremely fortunate to have the statisticians and economists at USDA that provide our marketplace and our markets with the data that is the envy to the rest of the world. America's farmers and ranchers wake up every morning believing that the sun will rise, it will rain, eventually even in Kansas it will rain, in Texas it will rain, and the price signals that they receive via the efficiencies of our resources, markets, technology, and ingenuity from farm to fork are the envy of the rest of the world. But this nation's farmers and ranchers are also long familiar with the fact that we can produce more than we can consume. This means that we must export to markets, or actually I want to use the word consumers, traditional and new. In this regard, American agriculture has long been threatened by international partners who do not play by the rules. Too many producers globally don't appear to operate under the same economics of supply and demand and reactions to market forces that we do. These folks have been breaking the rules for far too long. And President Trump has stepped into the breach and decided that something has to be done about it. And he's absolutely right. In this arena, the Trump administration is taking action. Currently at the WTO, we are challenging China's market price support for rice, wheat, and corn. Our estimates are that China has exceeded its WTO support limits in these commodities by somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 billion. That's 100 billion with a B dollars. When this kind of money is spent to support farmers and farmer income via ag commodity prices, the result is predictable. And China's stock levels have reacted accordingly. Now, these are USDA numbers that I'm going to give to you. And how many of you look at the monthly WASDE? Chuck, I know you do. Here's some numbers that I want you to appreciate. In China today, China is now home to 47% of the world's residual supply of wheat. Almost half of the residual supply of wheat in the world is in China. For corn, that number is 40%. For rice, that number is 66%. 2/3 of the world's residual supply of rice is in one country. 46% of the world's residual supply of cotton and 22% of the world's residual supply of soybeans is in China. This oversupply, caused by non-economic production, not only closes the Chinese market to American wheat and corn, but it also saturates other markets that harm our livelihood here at home. This is a problem. This is a big problem that we are addressing at the WTO. We are also challenging China's administration of tariff rate quotas for rice, wheat, and corn. Why? Because they're not fulfilling what they committed to when they became a member of the WTO. If they were, China would have imported, we think, about $3.5 billion worth of these crops last year alone. These two WTO cases are very, very important to U.S. agriculture. China's farm supports have overstimulated its production of agricultural commodities for several years and have resulted in massive stockpiles of food and fiber, and that is depressing prices for every other farmer in the rest of the world. President Trump is leading on this issue, and at the WTO and in other trading venues is warranted to tackle China's trade-to-starting policies head-on. The contrast between a belief in the market forces of supply and demand versus the total disregard of these forces could not be more stark. What I would like to impress upon each of you today is that this contrast is imposing a cost on each of us and in our agricultural markets that we can no longer continue to allow. The President's trade agenda also mentions reforming the multilateral trading system. There are a lot of different aspects of this, but for today's purposes in agriculture, I would like to highlight one word: transparency. And in order to negotiate, we must first have a fundamental understanding of the problems we are facing. Today's issues in this arena are not the same issues we had in 2000, and they're not even the same issues we had in 2010, which, by the way, was the last time China reported their supports to the WTO. So from our perspective at USTR, it's time to go back to the basics and the fundamentals of today's global ag trade and market access environment. So at one end of the spectrum, with the ag discussion at the WTO today, we have the folks who want more support and more protection. We all know who those folks are. Yet on the other end of the spectrum, we must continue to pursue the basics of trade liberalization and increased market access. The U.S. is taking a stand at the WTO, and it is time to return to negotiation in order to use the system as a forum. Use the system as a forum to further fairer and freer trade across the globe. In this regard, we are calling for a reset of the agricultural negotiations, beginning with improved transparency and a more realistic understanding of who should and should not continue to claim things like developing country status. U.S. agriculture has always had an aggressive trade agenda. And by U.S. agriculture, I want to emphasize that I mean farmers, ranchers, merchandisers, processors, handlers. When we say trade, though, we are also really speaking about access to new customers, with the emphasis on the word customers versus the word markets. In agriculture, we use words like safety and trust and wholesomeness, reliable supplier, and sound science. But is that enough? No. Our first step will be in this process is to seek an extension of Trade Promotion Authority until 2021 and aggressively use that authority to negotiate or revise trade agreements so they are fair, balanced, and support American prosperity. This includes NAFTA and Chorus and new trade deals that we will seek out. In order to lower the barriers, the many barriers to our products that continue to exist, we also have to have terms of trade and agreements between ourselves and our customers, those consumers in other countries. Here are a few milestones along that path. A successful NAFTA renegotiation, building coalitions with other countries to support sound regulatory policies for new technologies, and in some cases, not regulating these new technologies if that is appropriate. In the coming decades, our farmers will face significant new agricultural challenges. We know that. Pest and disease pressures, as well as the need to adapt production to address environmental concerns and enhance consumer well-being. Breeding will play a vital role in our efforts to address these challenges. Genome editing carries the potential to deliver significant societal benefits in the coming decades. We believe governments should provide clear and predictable paths for the commercialization of such products. As recognized in the recent report to the President, the Agricultural and Rural Prosperity Task Force, overly burdensome regulatory policies negatively affect innovation, which unnecessarily prevents farmers from accessing innovative and safe solutions to these challenges. For our part at USTR, we're going to work with the ag community to deliver on these task force recommendations on an international strategy on breeding innovation, as well as with the interagency to take forward the work to modernize the U.S. regulatory approach to biotechnology. That's what we do at USTR. We do a lot of work in the interagency process. And kind of my closing here today, of course, USTR will continue to work on resolving unwanted trade barriers. Here I'm going to mention Argentina, Brazil, China, the EU, India, Japan, Korea, Middle East, Africa. I could go on and on. It's the pages and pages and the number of issues. I still haven't gotten through a week on the job. There is a lot we've got to work on there. But the other thing, we're a ways off here, but we want to lay the groundwork with the UK for a potential FTA with the UK when and if they leave the European Union. And we're also preparing for other bilateral agreements, including Indo-Pacific and Africa regions. And a lot of other things that I won't go into. There's a long list. We know, we fully understand that times are tough in farm country and for our agribusinesses. I look forward to going to bat on behalf of U.S. agriculture to make progress on the multitude of challenges in the trade arena that we have in front of us. For my part, there are many days ahead involved in coordinating and consulting and coordinating with all of you and negotiating with our customers. It is truly an honor to serve you in this role. There's a lot to do. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak to you here today for the first time.